Hey, Teddy here. Sorry I haven't been able to put much up on my YouTube channel. But don't worry, I got more content coming up soon here on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. I promise you, and you will all see. Anyways, in case if you're all wondering how I've been as of lately, well, first off, let's go kick things off with a bang by discussing casual music Barham Shot. For where I am these days with the show, well, I'm still in the middle of playing the first Kingdom Hearts game, I will say. And on top of that, it is worth pointing out that, that regarding the future of casual music Barham Shot, I will say, that even though it's been confirmed that I will have my beard up for the top 11 dumbest Kingdom Hearts moments, however, it will not be every single episode of the show where you will see me in my beard, but rather even more so depending on a case-by-case basis. And the same can also be said for the Super Smash Bros. Files and video game look back. Anyways, as for upcoming vlogs I'm supposed to be releasing soon, the next special vlog I was supposed to be doing and still saying I'll be doing so will be one share my thoughts on 2017. Which tomorrow, from as I'm currently recording this, or if not sooner, I will do it. But anyways, after 2017 is out of the way, will come along D23 2022. And for what's going on with parodies these days, well, whether you Ariel's the uncensored version of Ariel's transformation will still happen one way or another. However, it is. However, regarding the future of Ariel's transformation parodies, I will say, once Ariel is on my YouTube channel, the uncensored version of transformation will come along. It's where I can feel ready to work on Jane Darling's transformation in terms of the funny side of things. Now, if you may recall when I did my last update vlog, I did indeed mention of how that W2 patterns that would come when it comes to doing such things. And most of the first couple of girls I would work on are mostly cartoon girls I would work on would mostly be more demanding ones from the point of view of joining me for a community event. However, it's been decided that after I do Jane, will come along, as in Jane Dark from Trip to Neverland will come along Mary Jane Watson from based more on her appearance and based more on her appearance in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon. And Peach's transformation will still happen, of course, duh. But then after Mary Jane Watson is out of the way, will come along Jasmine, and then come along and And then, but yeah, when it comes to said pattern, I did consider doing from the get go. After, when it comes to doing a subscription page begin with Jane, do bear in mind that when I say there be this pattern consisting of Disney and non-Disney, for the Disney side of things, we're focusing more on the Disney original side of things, if you will. However, for the next non-Disney girl I would do, it would be a mere no-brainer that, I would, that after Jasmine would include Daphne and Blake from Scooby-Doo. And then, comes along Belle. And then, yeah, for the first batch of non-Disney girls I would do, I will say, as I was saying earlier in this season's update vlog, that it's been decided for the first non-Disney girl I would do, non-Disney original, if you will, if you know what I mean. Not to be confused with Disney Plus. Would include Lois Lane based on her 90s cartoon style appearance. If you watch a lot of 90s cartoons, particularly ones based on superheroes, and yeah, and the second non-Disney girl I would do an air suspension period would be Daphne Blake from Scooby-Doo. And, yeah. Now, for the first three Disney girls after Ariel would include Jane from Church of Neverland, Jasmine from Aladdin, and Belle from Beauty and the Beast. As for the fourth Disney girl I would do, it will either be Snow White or Cinderella, but they're definitely among one of the next batch of Disney girls, and also known as well. And yes, Peach will be one of them as well, but yeah. Anyways, enough talk about. Oh yes, right. And also, as for what's going with steamed hams, well, funny you should ask me that. For there's one I was gonna release in October for Halloween, being one for Disney villains, which will still happen one way or another. However, I'm almost done editing in the voice clips for Hades. Anyways, and now I got things I really, really wanted to address with you. First of all, now another thing regarding casual reviews that needs to be said would be, well, that for the setup of how filming for all future episodes of the show, beginning with the top 11 Dumbest Kingdom Hearts moments, would work will be different compared to what you can find in the first three, being the choice of chair I would sit in and setting 2. And now I can address whatever else I need to address. Yes. Now, in some past update vlogs I did, particularly some more recent ones I answered some questions I knew all of you would be asking regarding steamed hams. One thing I knew all of you will need to know that, I'm continuing neglect of not talking about just yet would be regarding this. Now, as you can probably tell, Now, normally I don't like talking about this, but here we go. When looking ahead into the future of Steamed Hams dubs, which I will still do more of, one of them would include Star Wars: The Clone Wars. However, I did originally consider getting help from someone who's actually an animator who's a fan of epic battles, but after being adhered to that I can't find one, well, that's so it may not be a bigger deal. It may not be as big as having to be familiar with epic battles as may not be that much if you want to help me do a scene if you want to help me bring the animation for post end credits for Star Wars Clone Wars. But if this were to be Mr. Code and Friends, well, it would make sense that, to get someone help who knows about such things, help me with something like this. Because, because for what I have in mind for, the post-end credits for Star Wars: for Steam Tam Star Wars Clone Wars. Normally, I don't consider spoiling it, but here we go. But yeah, now say you're one of those people like them who enjoy what I do. Say you're a major sucker for the steamed hams meme in general, especially when it's Macedo produced, right? Would you have ever loved it if all of your favorite Skinner actors get together at the same time in a future video, kind of similar of how like with the Disney princesses did so for Ralph Breaks the Internet, as well as more of kind of an Avengers Endgame vibe kind of thing, if you will, if you know what I mean. Having the similar to when you have the Disney princesses got together and Ralph Breaks the Internet, as well as Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny together at the same time on Who Framed Roger Rabbit or stuff like that. Well, if you're one of those people who always dream to see me do such things whenever I feel like the time is right, well, that'll be your once in a lifetime chance seeing such things happen to me in a YouTube video. However, also worth noting regarding, but yeah, while on the topic of epic battles, I will say, yeah, something I've been in talks on wanting to do for a while is to adapt epic battles into a video game, and a diverse that kind of stuff at that. However, when it comes now, you're probably going to be thinking to yourself, what is the big deal in, say, wanting to make epic battles into a video game or stuff like that? Well, in getting to know it on what it is, you see, not only have the entire story, the entire saga that would make me want to make it into a video game, possibly even more so with, ask anyone who who have actually seen these movies, and people like them can tell you that, you have so many different characters who show up in these movies, So it would merely make sense that, I would want to make it into some video games of it. Now, you're obviously gonna, and while also on the topic of epic battles, I will say, there's an update that needs to be made on a project I wanted to do, a spin-off of it. You all know, and here, I've been wanting to do for a while. And I hate to break it to you, but it's gonna be a really sad one at that. For those who don't know, ever since back when I was during what I very well regard as the more darkest time of my personal life, being having to be forced to be in residential school, well, I've been wanting to make a spin-off of Epic Battles focusing on the groups called Battle of the Groups. But you're also going to be thinking to yourself, what the fridge is going on with it? But where it's stands at the moment as I'm currently recording this, Battle of the Groups is currently in development hell. But you're probably going to be thinking to yourself, why bother putting it in development hell? Well, it's kind of a long story. You will take wrong, you will get wrong, you may go make political rants about it, spew venom at me for. But here we go with that one. Okay then. Ever since when we hit class in 2018, ever since we all hit class in 2018 is where, it can be common on my end that I would engage in so many different fan rules surrounding the Epic Battles franchise. As well as always getting, and whoever I could gather since then, I would get lied to, I would get screwed over, and I would hear things that, just don't sound like the Donnie Dates who I, Teddy Macedo, personally got to know. Like, what are those said fan rules that do get to be made for the franchise that for whatever reason made me feel like placing it in development hell? Placing Battle of the Groups in development hell. Back in 2019, as you can all see, I did a video addressing how both Azuchi Guardian and Ethan Brown would both be considered rightfully innocent for setting up the death of Robin Williams, and for good reason. Obviously, you have no idea why the fridge I can do so, and I can tell you how that is so. That's because, at the time when I did that video, I grew so frustrated over the fact that, that for where I can be with research back then, and still I'm kind of doing so as I'm currently recording this, that it can't always be common that I wouldn't, like I was saying, when summing up why Battle of the Groups is now in development hell, let's just say, I would engage in so many different fan rules surrounding the franchise, Like, I would hear things that just don't sound like the Dante DeJesus who I, Teddy Macedo, personally got to know. Like, for example, said fan rule that made me want to make that video back in 2019 would have to involve, well, the idea of referencing my post-middle school life in Epic Battles. I mean, don't get me wrong. I always knew it would be inevitable that, at some point down the road, ever since the original Epic Battles was first made back in 2011, as sequels to that movie has to be made, that, it'd be inevitable that, that my high school life has to be spoken about, and as well as, including characters in things like Wreck-It Ralph, Frozen, Big Hero 6, Zootopia, Moana, Brave, Inside Out, Isle of Dogs, as well as referencing games like Super Mario Odyssey, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, the Splatoon series, and Smash 4, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Disney Infinity, Disney Sim Festival, and Disney Tsum Tsum Festival, and Yoshi's Whirly World as well. And yeah. However, who I could gather to help me with research for full, starting as a part time when I was in high school, then full time as I move on with my adulthood. Well, he would make many fan rules surrounding the entire Big Battles franchise. One of them thinking that, with a lot of characters like them, who on paper would have first appeared in one of the sequels, that he would believe that characters like them can be in throughout the whole entire Big Battle saga as much as, say, I don't know, Mickey Mouse, Mario, Jane, Sonic, Mega Man, Spider-Man, and Batman and Darth Vader. And two of these characters showing up in epic battles would engage in being put in that same exact fan rule surrounding post-middle school life having to appear throughout the whole epic battle saga would include Azuchi Guardian and Ethan Brown. If anything, when it comes to Azuchi Guardian and Ethan Brown, how they can be with Robin Williams. In a nutshell, they just made him roll in his grave, to put it lightly. However, there's anyone who did a lot of bad things to me who would, recent memory, who can be deserving to be called out as guilty for setting up the death of Robin Williams, Anik Banerjee. Why? Because at least with Anik, he did things to me that came across as quote-unquote distasteful back when Robin Williams was still alive. Azuchi Guardian, Ethan Brown, and the same can also be said by Mr. Harden, Earl Wheatley, Chrissy Trotta, Caleb Corker, and Tim Johnson. They would do anything they can under their power to make Robin Williams roll in his grave. Nothing silly about that. And then, whatchamacallit? Oh, yes, right. And, but, yeah. However, regarding certain other characters who unfortunately fall under the trap of that fan rule that get to be made up of epic battles regarding post-middle school life include Kyle Scissors, who I will say that, unlike Azuchi Guardian and Ethan Brown, who I consider to be both obnoxious, Kyle Scissors was always viewed as trustworthy and a very good friend of mine, Then also fell under that trap that referencing post-middle school life fan rule would include not one, but two video game characters, both of whom first appeared in Smash and Smash 4, including Shulk and Bayonetta. Like, what's the big deal with all that? Well, when it comes to the difference between how it can be so unlike of Dante to include Shulk through the whole entire Big Battle Saga would be different from, say, Bayonetta in many different ways. Well, with Shulk, something I always suspected that would happen with the idea of including characters from Xenoblade Chronicles and Epic Battles in a nutshell would be, well, that would make sense for Xenoblade Chronicles to see representation in the second film, because at the time when the first Epic Battles movie was first created, you see, this was, yeah, sure, you can say of how back then, of all things, it would be merely when, sure, you can say that at that point in time, Xenoblade Chronicles was released back in 2011. You can play Xenoblade Chronicles back in back just in time for my 15th birthday in 2000, just after my 15th birthday in 2011. But when we go back, way back then, there is kind of a cache of, say, if you want to play Xenoblade Chronicles back, say, around Easter time in 2011. Where back then it only saw nothing more than a Japan exclusive release. And did not get localized in English language until around 2012ish, back when Epic Battles 2 was in the making. But yeah, where's Bayonetta? Well, even though sure she did exist, that game of her existed back during the generation console war, where back when on behalf of the entire gaming market, when the Nintendo Wii, the PlayStation 3, and the Xbox 360, the PlayStation Portable key, the PSP for short, and the Nintendo DS all became a big deal on behalf of the entire gaming market. For my take on how I've always seen Bayonetta and Epic Battles in a nutshell, I've always viewed her as if she would have first been Epic Battles and Epic Battles 4, and here's why. Because, you gotta look at the Smash side of things alone, because, as you can probably tell, when we go way back when Bayonetta first joined Smash, a lot of people like myself did not expect to see Bayonetta in Smash. But instead, we would all expect to see, more Sonic characters, as Sega representation can concern, as well as there are other female characters who say Sakurai and Nintendo as a whole all could have included for Smash if they wanted to, like Amy Rose, Chun-Li, and Lara Croft. I would very well regard as some of the more quote-unquote worst offenders in this. I mean, at least they got to eventually include Daisy, Isabelle from Animal Crossing, and, oh yes, right, as well as Mithra Pyra from Xenoblade Chronicles. So there is all of that, But what about Amy Rose? What about Chun-Li? What about, Lara Croft? Yeah, even Jill Valentine too as well. But yeah. Another fan rule, however, there have been other fan rules made up for the entire Big Battles franchise I would engage in. Like, for example, another fan rule that gets to be made would include, now regarding said fan rule that would get me feeling like putting Battle of the Groups into development hell would be, would all boil down to, some grammatical issues, well, mathematics related, if you will. Like, when I get help from this JCC friend who is not afraid to admit, who would help regarding what I want to research for community events, at least typically speaking, that it can be common that, he would put out very, when he would say there's something I want to know about Epic Battles, I know it can be common that, he would say things that come across as quote-unquote confusing, like, mostly grammar-related in connections to mathematics, to the point that I can feel like it gets confusing, I get it, there's so many different characters, but still, But, yeah, but there's a line to all this that, I still want to do video game tournaments eventually. However, if you like, if you're one of those people who support what I do as a content creator, who would always want to see me do video game tournaments or what I want to be, there is a silver lining in all this. That'll be, well, I have other ideas of spin-offs of epic battles I want to make, mostly based on the sports side of things. And also have ideas of its own themed Smash game I wanted to make, as well as its own themed kart racing game, preferably more. It was its own themed kart racing game, and yeah. And and yeah. And but yeah. And yeah, it's kind of a shame that, for where I'm with Battle of the Groups that's currently in development. Hell, until I can find someone to personally talk to, who not only has actually seen these movies themselves one way or another, but also has a clear knowledge for such things. Because something that's been worrying, that I find to be worrisome lately about how I can be the writing director of my own epic battles related projects that, if I don't get the proper research I need, I'm gonna be toast like Chrissy Trotta, and I know I will be. It's not what I want anyways. But it is what I will get anyways if I don't get my act together with research. And now let's do a bit of a recap of something I did talk about in my last updated vlog. Now, if you may recall that in my last updated vlog, I got into a discussion about Mr. Ben, and for good reason. And to answer some questions I know you would all be asking me, no, Maddie, Mr. Ben did not return to me. Did not return. I mean, at least to put it lightly, it's been years since I've actually seen him or talked to him anyways. And for the better, anyways. And to answer Harry Henry's questions surrounding what I just said about Morgan, well, let's start off by addressing this. The first question Harry asked regarding calling Morgan out a Nazi. Well, something Morgan Ledger likes to think about me as a failure, which is how I can be given the idea of doing so. Like how so that something that made me feel like doing so can boil down to that when talking to Morgan about me, that he would want me to think more about things like my bar mitzvah more so than I would parodies. Which really does suck because, yeah. Now, I know what a lot of people who were there for that are probably thinking. What the fridge is the problem with my bar mitzvah of all things? Like, why very well regarded as a folly, as a failure, as opposed to a success? Well, let's just say it's complicated, but here we go. Back when I had my bar mitzvah, you see, the reason I always very well regard what a failure it was all boils down to the fact that, I'm sure everyone who came to my bar mitzvah would be all shocked, in the most Christianish way possible would be, well, that, I'd be lying if I did not admit about myself how much, I did not get to have the bar mitzvah the way I wanted to be, which is sad for me to say. Now, the only reason why I worked out that particular way is because I was in residential school at the time, which merely ruined the experience for me, and resulted as much mismanagement and connections to that as best as it can be, one way or another, Up to the point that it made me dream about wanting to redo my bar mitzvah. Which, when being completely honest, when I'm actually going to redo my bar mitzvah, funny you should ask me that. Well, let's just say it's been decided to, place it on hold. And I was doing community events of my own concern that, I have other ideas of community events I would like to do, I will say, at the meantime, outside of redoing my bar mitzvah, more so than just doing those either at the Alamo or Look. I knew for where I can be with community events these days, I know I would like to do video game tournaments, but also I knew I would want to do movie feast screenings at either Alamo or Look. And I say the latter, I would want to do some movie feast screenings at both Alamo and Look. Well, it's kind of a long story, but here we go. Now, the reason why when it comes to doing movie feast screenings in general, not so that sometimes I'll be at Alamo and sometimes I'll be at Look, is because, while I would rather be at the Alamo any day, every day, anyways, possibly what obviously drew my attention to do some at Look when I wanted to all boils down to the fact that, you see, there are movies like them I like to watch in general that, now the reason, now to keep this long story short, let's just say, even though I like the Alamo better, that when it comes to doing private screenings of stuff in general, that it can boil down to licensing issues at the Alamo itself. Which is why for some movies I would want to do private screening of that, I would sometimes be at Look when I want to. Now you're probably all going to be thinking about yourself, what is the big deal in wanting to do community events at Look as much as I would Alamo? Well, for the Look side of things, to put it all lightly, now, as you can all probably tell, as you know me very well by now, it is no secret that I love Disney and various IP of theirs, Not to say that all movies I like to screen are all Disney owned, but you know what I mean, because there are movies I do like that are Disney owned, yes. But also, of course, there are movies I do like that aren't Disney owned as well. So I guess that's how I typically see myself doing movie feast screenings. In a nutshell, that Alamo would be where I would do feast screenings of movies I like that are not Disney owned, at least typically speaking. Whereas Look will be where I would do feast screenings of movies I like that are Disney owned. I mean, don't worry, my lovely Alamo folks watching this. I still love you guys, but I have to do my part, to be a good rule follower as best as I can, and yeah. And, as with the whole Morgan committing the crime of Holocaust denial thing, he did say Zuchi Garden doesn't exist, which can come across as that for its own merits. I say that for, when it comes to Zuchi Guardian in a nutshell, if you may recall when I back 2 years ago, when I rightfully apologized over this one mistake I made back during the Thanksgiving weekend in 2018, if you know what I'm talking about. Well, I did explain as best as I can that, if it weren't for Zuchi Guardian, certain things like this could not have happened to me. And as you can all probably tell when you hear me say how Zuzu Guardian changed my life personally, changed the world personally, that is the polar opposite of Mystical and Friends, and that's bad, you know? To be the polar opposite of those guys, in which you'll hear me out later. Anyways, like certain events I often like to bring up that would occur because of him would include, this Halloween trick he committed back in 2016 over Jaime-tude, over getting away and ruining his birthday, to the point that it is what unfortunately resulted in not just the unfortunate falling out that already came to be between me and Mike mixtape, but also what unfortunately put the Anna fan club at the time into a downward spiral. At least back then. Thankfully, as it comes to my understanding, Caleb is no longer part of the Anna fan club. Big hurrah to that. And on top of that, at least even when Animat did take charge of the fan club, that, at least, he would let people like them who truly respect me, as opposed to someone who's saying layman's terms, just come across as some Chris Chan joke. Which is complaints I've always had with Caleb. Which is another story for another day, and you'll see. And, now, it's no secret to the world of how that, when I first went to MagFest, that, that I played things to Christianish on my end, guilty enough on my end, when it came down to, this one girls show Disney did back then called Star vs. the Force of Evil. Which I'm going to be honest here, that the latter I did so out of frustration over Zuchi Guardian, who really cannot be accepting of the fact that, that regardless where I go with my creative life, I'm still straight. I'm born straight, I'm raised straight, and I will die straight. But yeah, you get my point. You get the idea when you hear me say that no matter where I go with my creative life, I will always forever be straight. And, yeah. Also would consider blaming Azuchi Guardian for, getting who you all know by now to be a dear good friend from high school, who you may know as Nicholas Centric, a Banana Gamer 105, regarding my stance on shows like My Little Pony and Star vs. the Force of Evil. Which, being completely honest, how life as a brony is these days in a nutshell, not gonna lie when I say this, but I am still a brony. You just like to think that I'm no longer, I quit being a brony all because, as you can probably all tell, at the time when I first became a brony back in 2015, when I was in 12th grade in high school, I got off into a rocky start when it came to that. All just because of Azuchi Guardian, who can never be accepting the fact that I'm still straight. And used to make comments like, oh, you're not a real brony. I will say, you're not a real brony, but yeah. Now, you're probably going to be thinking to yourself, what is the big deal with me becoming a brony? Now, the only reason why it worked out that way is because of epic battles, I will say. Like, I will say that, what caught my attention to not only remain a brony even up to this day, while we're now in 2022, but also what made Star vs. the Force of Evil a show I would consider underestimating would all boil down to the epic battle side of things, I mean, don't get me wrong. Nicholas Centra is still a good friend. And in fact, I still talk to him even up to this day while we're now in 2022. Well, maybe not as much as before, but when we do, we do. But yeah. And for the record, Nick, I still enjoy what Morgan and Jaime-tude do as contributors of anything further they can be as human beings, especially even more so with Morgan. He just needs to learn to grow the hell up. I mean, complaints I've always had with Morgan, you see, is, now it's one thing for a content creator I may otherwise support to not want to be my friend. Fine at all. But when you be such a crook with me, this is where I draw the line, because sure, you can say the same exact thing about Animat, but at least with Animat, he wouldn't dare go all Chris Chan on me, nor would he, recklessly consider doing anything for that matter that can involve violating civil rights like the ADA, for example, the Americans with Disabilities Act, if you will. Morgan, on the other hand, he cannot be accepting of others when he doesn't want to, even more so with me as a worst offender in this. And if what I'm hearing is true, that Morgan Ledger is in fact a part of the entire autism spectrum, I guess you can all tell when Morgan Ledger knows how to be such a Chris Chan with people like me when he wants to be, if you know who I'm talking about. Anyways, going back to the Holocaust denial thing that Morgan did on Azuchi Guardian, you will be surprised to know that it wouldn't be the first time Morgan would ever engage in Holocaust denial. I remember 2 years prior, Mike Mixey did tell me the same exact thing regarding when I did get away in blaming Mr. Ben for ruining my friendship with Morgan Ledger, and for good reason. Now, the reason I would always blame Mr. Ben for ruining my friendship with Morgan is because, giving Morgan such ideas to go all Chris Chan on me when he wanted to, and how he was going to do things worse to him, well, now in Mr. Ben's case, should I say to put it lightly, let's just say when he was my social worker, when I was going to school at Westbrook, that, one of those things he always liked to talk about when he wanted to, when I have my session with him, especially even more so whenever the third person in the room would include, well, certain grudges he would have at the time for over this one minor thing I did at the time, that would be, of course, posting something on Morgan's Facebook page publicly, I'm gonna be really, really honest here. What people like Morgan and Jaime would like to think of me in a nutshell, when talking to Morgan and Jaime, more so with Morgan on what quote unquote bugged them about me, as you can probably tell, all old news, Whatever happened to me back in 2013 happened in 2013. And whatever happened in 2018 happened in 2018, and move on, because, yeah. And I know I can sound like to some people that I can't move on. Really, I can. You just like to think I can't, just to quote unquote seek attention. But yeah, I will admit, it's kind of weird that, that even up to this day, while COVID is happening, Morgan still does the same exact childish bullcrap to me as he did back when I was in high school. Which is a total shame, because I try to be as fair and respectful as I can, but he just can't. Sad. But, yeah. Now, regarding said complaints I've had with Morgan, I will say, not only can I be guilty of using that video Yoshi Player did on Animat back in 2022 and summing up some about complaints I have with him, but also, as Harry Henry watching this can probably tell as we speak, one of my other favorite Mr. Coat memories would include when he did this video talking about the do's and don'ts of being a critic, and for good reason. I mean, is it just me, or does Mr. Coat know how to be very insightful with his content? But anyways, something that would make him the do's and don'ts of being a critic, one of my favorite Mr. Code videos, right up there with when he explains the difference between a family film and a children's film, would include, well, something I've always, because, let's be real here. Nobody likes feeling disrespected for any given reason. Not even me. I mean, don't get me wrong. You can have your disagreements and, and you can be honest how I feel if I want you to be honest how I feel. But when it involves hurting other people, it's where I draw the line. Because, like I was saying when summing up said complaints I've had with Morgan, and why I would very well regard the do's and don'ts while being a critic, Mr. Coate did, Nobody likes feeling disrespected for any reason, We get it, Morgan. Even I get it too. You just cannot help but want to be honest, I feel great and all, but, even I had to learn the hard way from personal experience that, you want to watch what you say. And let's be real here. The only reason why you haven't been taking any complaints I've had with you seriously and instead treat them like the bunch of New York jokes is because, most people like them who, from what I can understand, when they go at you on a negative light, that usually it can involve, say, you want to be honest how I feel. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can be honest how I feel, more like, you put up a review on this movie that, not everyone can be agreeing with you on, and you got a lot of people like them, from what I can understand, who would think you're wrong for liking or hating on a movie that, yeah. Me personally, never do I think anything wrong on you liking or hating stuff. You can like what you like, you can hate what you hate. And, I'm most certainly not going to lie about myself, Morgan, that I've always respected your opinions, If anything, what I've always had a zero tolerance for is, let's be real here. Like I was saying, nobody likes feeling disrespected. And I completely understand where, I can also even acknowledge of how that you can have days like this where, you're just doing your job, and that's great and all. You want to be honest how I feel, great. In fact, I'd be lying if I didn't admit it by myself that I can't acknowledge when you were able to be honest how I feel without, doing like what you did to me, like what he did for stuff like Marzine's Moms and the Page Master, from what I've seen. Regarding the Page Master side of things, it's why it's good, as I mentioned, as I also said in my last update vlog, that I still have no plans on reviewing the Page Master. Marzine's Moms, on the other hand, I would most certainly do so when I want to for myself. I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that I got things to say about the movie that, nobody else ever did, as you can see. Yeah. And yes. And now, let's close off this season's update vlog with a bang by discussing who I would very well regard as the saviors of mine from when I would otherwise go through an otherwise troubling school life, the Mr. Coate and Friends community. Now, you're probably going to be thinking to yourself, what is there to say about Mr. Coate and Friends? Well, back in 2019, Harry and Henry got away wishing death on me and just my love for them just because, well, of what happened between me and them back in 2018 over this one mistake I made back then. You get the idea, but yeah. Now, yes, when it comes to Mr. Coate and Friends, on me, in terms of my stance on them as it is, they are not. If it weren't for talented reviewers like them, like Adam as a Worst Offender, Mr. Code, Some Trick with the Camera, Morgan Ledger, 102 and others, I could not and would not where I'd be in many different ways, socially, creatively, and mentally. Up to the point that God knows that, I could have lost my life because of where it was when I first got to reviews. Just be lucky I don't think about such things anymore. And it's funny that none of you people want me to think about wanting to kill myself anyways, because, I will admit, if I can handle my life the way I want to be, I'd rather live as long as I'm till 105 as opposed to dying young anyways. But what's the big deal in all this? Well, when I first got into reviews in general, at the time when I first got into reviews in general, I was going through such a dark place where I was personal life-wise more so being in residential school, which, for the record, I'm no longer in, thankfully. Been years since I last engaged myself in such things. Now I do what is called independent living, group home, where luckily for me that I do get more freedom with technology, which is great for me. And, yeah. As for how Mr. Quinn Friends changed my life in a nutshell, not only have I learned a number of interesting things pertaining to entertainment in general, I did learn such things like Walt's stance on him making sequels to his own movies, as well as J.R. Tolkien hating on Disney movies, but also, I would have not have known such things like the Groovenians, for example. Grandma got run over by a reindeer. And I would not have known what the Fridge is Dinotopia, and yeah. And I know I made my 2 cents in the past on how anime changed my life, but I'm not going to repeat that, but I will say that, also if it weren't for Mr. Code and Friends, there'd be not 1, but 2 games VG Retro reviewed years ago that I've grown a fond appreciation of, including Super Star Wars, being as a Star Wars fan, and even more so with Mickey Mania, being as some Disney fanboy. Also, if it weren't for Mr. Code Friends, I would not have known about things like John Belushi and, and possibly 2 of the more recent events that changed my life for the better because of Mr. Code Friends. Well, earlier this year, that, as you can all see on Mr. Coates' YouTube channel, that he came out with a video on his own YouTube channel that on my birthday that, I definitely well regard as one of the best birthday gifts. Why? Well, it's one of those videos that Mr. Code did like them where not only do I find to be very insightful, but also can be agreeing on what I want to be. Of course, I'd rather do things I like more so than I would dislike anyways, And of course, another more recent event that changed my life, also because Mr. Code and Friends would include my appreciation for a show that, Jaime Toon, Morgan Ledger, and the Nostalgia Kid all enjoyed watching, simply known as Mystery Science Theater 3000. And yep, that is right. My appreciation for Mystery Science Theater 3000 officially grown because of Morgan, and Jaime Toon, and Gus Webb, aka the Nostalgia Kid, and dare I say that. But yeah, this wraps up this season's update vlog. Thanks for watching.